What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of Sales Stories in Real Life 2.0. I'm your host, Alex Bruschi, and today we have Jen Allen-Knuth, the founder of DemandJen. She is helping teams to create messages that defeat the status quo and earn the attention of executives. Jen, welcome to the show. We start every episode with an immediately actionable takeaway. So can you give us an immediately implementable tip that listeners can use to take a more buyer-centric approach to their selling?
Yes. And it's something I screwed up for probably the first 10 years of my sales career. So empathy to you if you did too. Um, Instead of trying to get the customer to believe that you have a better solution to their problem, our first and foremost job is actually to help the customer to decide if they have a problem worth solving and worth solving now.
There it is. And how can folks really dig beyond the surface to get to
Mhm.
those answers, right? Because there are surface level answers there and there's really digging for the truth. How would you recommend folks do that?
So I think first and foremost, we have to take a hard look at thinking about our classic conventional wisdom around how we sell. So if you look at a cold email, a cold call, a sales deck, a sales pitch, oftentimes what we're trying to do is we're trying to convince the customer that we have a better way. And what I learned after way too many losses is you can win that argument and still lose the deal. Like I could say, okay, you have a better way of solving the problem, but I've still decided that this problem isn't as big as this other problem over here. And so one of the things I talk about ad nauseum, I'm sure some people are sick of hearing about it from me, is this idea of cost of inaction. And first and foremost, what cost of inaction is it's a way to hold up a mirror that helps the customer or prospect realize a negative consequence to how they're solving the problem today. Now, I want to contrast that with what ROI is. Now, when I sold, going back to what I just said, I used to go in trying to say, like, look at all the ROI, look at all the 15 times and all these improvements. And
Right.
the problem with ROI is it's a maybe. Like, sure, I might see those same results or I might not. And by the way, it requires me stopping what I'm doing, changing, getting everybody around me to change too. And I think as a salesperson, I underappreciated what that meant. So it wasn't just the cost of the solution, it was all the disruption that presents when you stop solving a problem one way and start solving it another. And so, why I really gravitated towards cost of inaction is because ROI is you might see this benefit if you change. Cost of inaction is really this is the risk or cost or unintended consequence you are seeing as a result of solving the problem the way you've been solving it. And so in my mind, like job number one for us is to work with the customer to figure out, is there even a sizable cost of inaction worth addressing? Because that it's mutually beneficial. If there isn't, I'm not going to sit here and create fancy proposals and try to get executive buyers on the line and bring in people from my side for a deal that has no legs by the time it meets the CFO.
That's a really good distinction there. And I think, to your point, one of the common pitfalls for folks earlier in their career is determining that you have a better way of doing something is oftentimes not even halfway. Like you're not even halfway there. Like folks might oh, I'm forecasting this one. Like we've got use case alignment. Like that's like table stakes these days. So I love your distinction between cost of inaction there. Tell me, I know you and I spoke about this the first time that we did a podcast. Is what would you say buyer centric even means to you? I think everyone has a different definition of it. What would you
Yes.
define it as?
I think buyer centric, if we're really being serious about being buyer centric, it means slowing the hell down and stop trying to sell. Like I think looking back, the one big lesson I wish I learned a lot sooner is the worst way to sell a deal is by trying to sell a deal. And I know that sounds like cliche or whatever. But what I mean is when I look at the conversations that yielded really good outcomes, like six-figure deals, seven-figure deals, ripping out an old supplier, bringing in a new supplier, those were the conversations where I didn't start off trying to convince the buyer of anything. I started off by just saying, like, let's together look at this problem because there's things that I know, having worked with other companies that are solving the problem this way. There's things that because hell, you work there and there's a lot I don't see as an outsider. And I think when you change the tone of the conversation to really figure out, is there something we know about the problem that they don't, that regardless if they go with us or not, is going to help them make better decisions. That to me is buyer centric. Like buyer centric, you can tell in a call, is this a sales centric call or is this a buyer centric call? It should feel like two employees of the same company sitting down and trying to figure out a problem together. A sales centric motion feels like someone on the outside trying to convince or pressure someone to do something that they don't really want to do. And so I think, if I look back on if I had call recording technology when I started in sales, I would argue probably most of my calls were me trying to convince or push. Nothing about that is buyer centric. That's completely sales centric, and that I'm trying to hit a quota. And I feel like I've got to strong arm someone into doing it for me.
It's just much more sense of collaboration. I love how you said it, like two internal employees trying to solve a conversation, trying to solve a problem, not us two, hey, I want to sell you this thing, so let's go down this
Yeah.
path. Really, really, really well said there. What would you say like makes a great buying experience? Like I feel like you kind of just like started alluding to that, but I mean, you're working with a lot of teams, so you see how folks are building pipeline, closing deals. Like, what do you consider a great buying experience?
Yeah, well, I think we're in this like very messy era of sales right now, which is fun on one hand and sad on another, because the sad part is I think we're all rushing to figure out like, well, how can AI just do a better job of it? And I hate, candidly, I hate that, because I do think the profession of sales has always been about helping buyers and helping organizations make better decisions for their businesses. But one of the things I do think is interesting is I think because all of this narrative around X is dead, cold emails are dead, cold calls are dead, just being a salesperson is dead. I think it's forced us to revisit some of our assumptions around what we are doing in pursuit of earning an executive's time. So, what I mean by that specifically is like one of the things I teach and I talk a lot about with my clients who sell into enterprise and mid market is even the notion of a cold email once was, like, hey, my name is this. I hope you're well. And here's what we do. And here's all the awards we won. And then we decided like that was shit. So we stopped doing that. Then it moved to, hi, I noticed this like totally obvious thing. You're a VP of sales at a $5 billion company. And so I thought you might be interested in what we have to offer. Then we decided that was shit. Then it evolved to, hi, there's this trigger that popped because of some technology that 95 other sellers also had pop on their technology too. And so I'm reaching out to you because of that. And then I think that's largely where we've been. But the problem with a lot of these motions is it's like so easy to copy. If I'm hitting someone because they just landed a funding raise and I'm starting my email with congratulations on your Series D funding, so are 55 other sales reps that day. And so I think the good out of it is it's forcing our hand that we've got to get much better and much more creative around how do I have a conversation with an executive that is not about me, where I don't even in a cold email or a cold call talk about what I do until I'm asked. And so for me, that is I've got to share something insightful about a problem I anticipate they might have that does not at face value pitch my product. And I think that like we've been forced there, but I actually do think that's a good thing for our profession. It's going to force us to have conversations that aren't product or solution dependent. And it's going to force us to get better about saying, why would an executive want to speak with someone? It's probably not at a C level so they can see our demo or hear about how awesome we are. And I do think that will make us better if we choose to go down that path.
It's a great call because I do think that signal-based selling has kind of become popular. And to your point, like using those signals the way everybody else is just like a surefire way to just blend in with the noise. For folks that are doing some sort of a signal-based selling motion, like how would you suggest them using those signals, but in a more buyer-centric way?
Okay, I love this question because I do think signals are good. I don't want to knock them and say like they're bad. I totally support this. But to me, the signal is not the reason why we reach out. The signal is the reason why we do research to figure out why we should reach out. So I talked about this example a couple months ago. Vanta, which is a company a lot of people know, they do like SOC 2 compliance. They raised another round of funding. And it took me maybe 3 minutes at most to read their funding announcement where the CEO, Christina, talked about the fact that they were looking to continue to move up market. They named 3 logos they landed that were big logos. They should be really proud of them. And then they talked about investing in AI, which makes sense. Most companies are doing that. And so I looked at those two and I said, okay, if what I sell is sales training, and I come in and I say, hi, my name's Jen, and congratulations on the fundraise. I would love to share with you how we can help you move up market and how I can help your sales reps be better at that. I am no different than anyone else. And most people that we're reaching out to are not in the 3% of people who've decided they have the problem that we solve for. And so when I talk about giving yourself a reason to reach out, what I did with that is I said, okay, they're moving up market. They already have some wins there. What problem is likely to occur because of that shift up market? So when you look at how they started, it was largely selling into like enterprise, or excuse me, SMB and low mid market, where these companies don't have a current way for doing SOC 2 compliance. But enterprise, it's a very different problem, right? The enterprise, you probably have a way, and now you have to unwind it if you want to bring on a solution like Vanta. So I imagine if I'm a sales rep in that position, that probably requires a totally different motion. I've got to defeat a status quo that's settled. And then I probably have a lot more stakeholders because it's an enterprise company. It's not like 4 people sitting around being like, should we do it or should we not? And so what I could do with a message like that is instead of introducing myself and saying congratulations and all this stuff up front, I could say something like Christina spoke about the move up market, building off the wins from company A, B, and C. Not sure if you're seeing this, but often enterprise companies require much more consensus requirements than an SMB does. So the average that we've seen is about 11.2. Not sure if your sellers are finding it harder to get the group to agree on the idea of change, but if so, GE had a really smart way for solving it. Would you be open to hearing how they did it? Now, I'm not talking at all about my product or my solution. They don't even know that I sell sales training, and that's okay because we have the internet. They can look me up, right? And that's kind of what I want them to do. I want them going down a bit of a learning path that they can see. I've worked with other companies that have had this problem. And so what I'm positioning there is not a call about learn about DemandJen training. The call is actually about learn about how other companies have accounted for this really tough challenge, which is how do you go from selling to one person to many? And so that's what I mean by being much more comfortable talking about the problem and coming with a hypothesis about the problem instead of just coming in with, I saw this event, which made me think you might need my services now.
I love what you did there, and I want to just rewind there because you didn't just I mean what that message did is, I mean, you're talking a mix of industry knowledge, right? We've seen others having this range of percent. You're adding a customer story, right? You want to learn how GE did the same. And I think more importantly is like you're reading in between the lines. Like I think many folks are just kind of going for that surface level to your point. Oh, you raised money. That means you must have more money to buy my tech
Yeah.
versus like you raised money because you want to go up market. So that must mean your sales motion is inevitably going to change and you're going to have to start defeating status quo. So maybe kind of talk a little bit about kind of some of the uncertainty tone that you put in there as well, because I know that's something that you also talk about is like using an uncertainty tone in cold emails. What do you see from
Yes.
that?
So I'll say what it is and then I'll say why it's important. Unsure tonality is where you say things like not sure if. So if you notice when I, you know, basically read the email, I'm like, not sure if you're seeing more stakeholders get involved. Of course I'm sure. It's just logical. But if I come in and I'm like, you must be, you can almost feel the walls of the prospect going up because it's someone else outside of your house coming in and saying your house is messy. We as human beings do not take well to that. And so even if I agree that they're right, more often than not, I'm going to put my walls up. I'm going to get defensive because I don't want to be wrong. And so if I say not sure if, it is sparking the human desire to correct. And that's why it works. Because anytime I'm talking about someone else's business, I could do 20 hours of research. I still don't know. I don't work there. And I think there's this perception that in sales, we have to come in guns blazing, knowing all the answers, being very assertive, having this like authoritative tone and taking control and all this nonsense, which if you flip it around, I don't know anybody who would sign up for an interaction like that. Like, who wants
Right.
to be bullied and told that their baby is ugly? Not me, not a lot of people. And so unsure tonality doesn't make us weak. It just simply acknowledges that I am an outsider looking in. I want you to correct me where I'm wrong because every correction is a two-way dialogue. And that is how I'm learning. That's how I'm discovering. It's not by asking some like dopey discovery question someone came up with 20 years ago in a handbook for sales.
Tell me how
Sorry.
you really feel. No, I really, really love that a lot. That's like really using psychology to your advantage
Mm.
as a salesperson. And I feel like folks always say, if you want to get better at selling, get better at psychology. And that's a prime example as to why. We've talked about a lot of just like general changes in the B2B buying and selling landscape. What other changes do you see on the horizon that maybe other people aren't talking about yet?
So I know everybody wants to like turn, go like push down salespeople and just make AI do everything on the sales side. Like I have an AI that can write my emails. I have an AI that can like, run my discovery. All this stuff. I truly don't understand that. What I think is the bigger opportunity is buyers have already said we don't like talking to salespeople, which I think is a little bit generalized. I think buyers just don't like talking to ineffective salespeople, but let's just take it at face value.
Right.
Buyers don't like talking to salespeople. Why wouldn't buyers be the part of the equation that uses AI? Like my need as a buyer is arguably static, right? This is what my need is, and I'm now going and shopping around. If I could remove myself, let's say I'm a CIO, if I could remove myself from having to sit on terrible sales calls, why wouldn't companies automate that part? Because then you could actually, I think there's probably deep down, buyers still are going to want to talk to sales because they want to know who are the humans on the other side of the equation that I'm inevitably going to have to deal with if I sign this thing. Like I would be super skeptical of doing a complete AI buy with an AI sales rep because I'd be like, who is crawling out of the woodwork to help me on the other side? And so I would be really curious if I've got a AI buyer agent, I can program what I think I need, I can give it context, and then I shoot it out to everybody. And now I can see how do these people outperform one another. That
Mm.
to me seems way more interesting than having buyers who already hate like being treated like a number come in and be like, okay, what robot am I talking today? So maybe that's a load of garbage, but that to me seems like the bigger opportunity.
I think that's genius, and maybe you should get ready to start raising some rounds.
I don't even know how to like sign up for ChatGPT barely, so I'm probably not the girl.
Well, I think you're onto something there. That all that aside, maybe sort of similar, but like, do you have a hot take that like maybe you go against the grain from kind of common knowledge? Anything along those lines?
I don't know if it's so hard to tell what's a hot take anymore because the internet is so biased, but I think one of the things that I fundamentally disagree with is I hear a lot of chatter around like, and I'm just going to stay on the AI train around like AI um taking on less important roles of the salesperson, like prospecting. And I hear that and it makes everything in my body cringe. Because if I think about the entire sales process, I would argue the hardest job in an entire sale is not closing. It's actually getting someone to say, I will go from living my life doing what I've always done to saying, maybe I'll learn a little bit more about you. That's
Right.
prospecting, right? Now, there are parts of the job I fully lean in on AI. Like I love, so I'm a partner with Clay. And like, I love that Clay will say, if you have an enterprise territory and you got 100 accounts, instead of going to 100 different, investor pages, you can use automation to grab the information you need so that you can think critically. Like, I'm all in on that. But this idea that like prospecting in of itself is a low value activity is largely, I think, why we are where we are today and why so many companies struggle to build pipeline because we've just totally diminished the value of it. And we've put our least experienced people on it and we've given the least amount of training and business acumen to them. And then we like hit them over the head being like, why don't you book more meetings? I don't know. Why would they book more meetings? Like nothing about that formula makes sense to me.
Don't disagree with you there. I think my favorite use case of AI by far, to your point, is research.
Mhm.
Like research, it is like, yes,
Yeah.
huge time savings. There are manual processes that I think can really transform. But to your point, like something like breaking through the noise, prospecting, don't know. But moral of the story is, Jen, you have been very hard at work building DemandJen. Why don't you plug something with the audience here before you jump?
Oh, that's nice of you. Plug something. We are about to head into sales kickoff season for many companies. I have, and my other like hot take is I genuinely don't think what a lot of salespeople want at sales kickoffs is a motivational speaker. Like, no shade to the people who climb Mount Everest. I could never do it. I think it's amazing. But unless that person is climbing Mount Everest and then running like a killer discovery call at the top and talking about that, I just struggle to know what I'm supposed to do with this information when I get back to my desk. So one of the things I sell is workshops for SKOs, sales kickoffs, QBRs, where we're actually working on target accounts and addressing that problem we've been talking a lot about today, which is how do you open up a conversation without talking about your product? So that's what I'll pitch for today.
Motivation will only take you so far. It's fleeting, it's temporary, but that kind of knowledge, it's almost giving like, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man. It's like you're teaching people to fish versus getting them hyped up. So if anybody listening is looking for an SKO speaker, look no further than
Thank
Jen
you.
Allen-Knuth. Jen, this has been absolutely fantastic. Round two, maybe even better than the first. Folks should go back and check out that first one if they haven't already. Sales Stories in Real Life, fam. We will see you next week. Jen, thank you again. Cheers.
Thank you. Great being with you.